up, guys? James here. This is take 2 because for whatever reason my website was just not working for about 5 minutes. That's what happens when you host it on a shared VPS instead of, a legit hosting. Anywho, today's video is it's not going to be that long. It's kind of a short video, I think. I'm going to be showing you a component that I built, an Etch component of it's a grid that turns into a carousel on mobile. So it's, you could build this anywhere, of course, anywhere where you can put HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. But I turned it into an Etch component, which, if you know anything about components, it means that I can do some things like add some props that make it so I can easily customize certain aspects of it. So I could drop the component on one page and it could be this certain way. I can drop the same component on another page and I can modify it so it's a little bit different there, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. I'll show you what those options are. But this is what we're looking at here. This is my grid. I call it grid to carousel because I'm super clever, and it is a grid that on mobile turns into a carousel. So this is obviously a better experience than, if you had this grid and there's only 7 images here, but let's say there's like 20, right? It looks fine on desktop, a little bit of scrolling, you get to the next section, but then you go down to mobile and you have to scroll past 30 images to get to the next section. That's just not a good experience. So this component just turns it into a carousel on mobile. So then you can scroll sideways, or you can just scroll on to the next section. So I'm going to show you the back end. I'm not going to build this whole thing in front of you. I'm just going to kind of show you the back end of how it works, and I'm going to focus mostly on the component and the props aspect of it, so you can see how easy it is to drop this on multiple places on your website, but maybe modify it a little bit each time. So let's go ahead and edit with Etch and hope it actually works this time. Here we go. All right, so here's a component. You can tell it's a component in Etch because it's purple. And if I right click on it, we can edit it, and I'll show you kind of briefly what we got going on here. Here's the wrapper. So this is not dynamic. You could easily make it dynamic. You could drop this in a loop, or you could drop a loop in here, loop through a JSON object or some custom post types. But this component is just static. So I just have 7 items added in there. Then there's the div for the buttons, the carousel buttons, pagination, which I think I have disabled on this component, but you should be able to enable that in here. It's like an option in here somewhere. Yeah, somewhere in here you would enable pagination if you wanted it. So this does require a JavaScript library called Swiper. It's a very popular library that people use to create carousels. And so basically what's going on is, apart from the standard Swiper JavaScript that you would have in here that initiates Swiper, what it does is it actually doesn't initiate Swiper until you get to a certain screen width. And then when you increase beyond that screen width, it destroys or uninitiates Swiper, right? So if you're above that screen width, it's just a regular grid, no Swiper involved, and then you get down to a certain width, and then suddenly Swiper becomes involved and turns it into a carousel. And you're thinking, what is that width? Well, it's actually whatever you want it to be, and we'll take a look at that here in a minute. Other than that, you can see here it's a grid and at various screen sizes, and this looks more complicated than it might normally if you know how grid works. But this is what makes the component, the props, work. So if you, let's go ahead and back out of this and see the options that we have. When you click on the component, you have some options down here. And I'm going to move my face so you can see this better. So grid loop, we're not using that right now because we're not looping through anything, but it's there in case you want to use it. But these are the 2 options that we're going to look at. The number of columns, so you can choose how many columns you want the grid to be. So let's make it 3. There you go, 3 columns. And the mobile breakpoint, that's the point at which it becomes a carousel. So I had it set to 1160 just for testing purposes, just to see what that looks like. But you're probably going to do something more like 680 pixels. So let's save that and go look at the front end. First of all, you'll notice now it's 3 columns, right? And then it's responsive, so at some point it'll go to 2 columns, and then it goes to 1 column, and then at 680 pixels, it's going to turn into a carousel right there. And if you want to see that in action, we can do this, so then it'll show us the screen width. So look up here in the corner, right? 685, 680, carousel. And if we want, come in here, and maybe let's say instead of 680, we want 768. Save that. Refresh. And now, keep an eye up here. Gonna get down to 768. Boom, it's a carousel. And there it is. I need to fix this, I think, to make it, yeah, I need to make it less than or equal to 768. So we just found a bug, and I will fix that, probably off camera. So those are the two things that you can do. You can change the number of columns, and then you can change the breakpoint, the point at which it becomes a carousel. And that is done with the power of a component. So you can see if I edit this component, come down here, we have these 3 props. This is a loop prop, and then these 2 are just text props, meaning you can just type whatever you want. And then whatever you put in here will be the default. You don't have to have a default, but it's usually a good idea to have a default. So if you don't change it, it will be a 3-column grid, and it will turn into a carousel at 680 pixels. And then whatever you put here, so we delete that, and delete that, and you can see the defaults are showing. So the default 3 columns, default 680. We save that. Nothing should change because that's basically what we had in there anyways. But come back here, maybe we want this to be 2 columns. Refresh, 2 columns. So pretty neat, because you could drop this on one page and you can make it 3 columns, and maybe on another page you want it to be 4 columns. Easy peasy. And then of course, you know, depending on how whenever the rest of your site kind of breaks into mobile view, you can make this turn into a carousel at that same width. So maybe you're using 680 pixels, maybe you're using 768, maybe you're using something else. You can put whatever you want in there. The responsiveness is kind of complicated looking. So this is basically saying at anything greater than or equal to 680 pixels, if you choose 4, if you typed in 4 columns, then it will be 2 column, 2 column, 2 column, because it's only 680. So it doesn't really matter what you choose. When you get down to that screen size, it should be no more than 2 columns, right? And then we get a little bigger, 768. Well, now if you chose 4, then at this width it's going to be 3 columns. 3 columns if you chose 3, of course, and 2 columns if you chose 2. And then you get to the bigger screen, anything bigger than 1160. If you chose 4, it'll be 4. And if you chose 3, it'll be 3. If you chose 2, it'll be 2. So this is all basically just repeating myself at each screen size, determining what it should be based on what you picked, right? So if you put 2 columns, it's still going to be, or if you put 3 columns, it's still only going to be 2 columns at this width. It doesn't matter, you know, because it'd look funny if you had 3 columns all squished in there. So this is all just making sure that it's responsive no matter what you choose. So and that's basically it. Otherwise, the rest is pretty simple. If you are familiar with basic grids, that's really all we're doing here is a grid of images. There's some basic styling to each item and to the images. And that's it. So like I said, you could loop through something if you wanted to, instead of doing static data. Right now, this is just using images from one of my websites, but you would obviously want to replace these images with your own images, of course. You can make them links, whatever you want to do. And of course, you can also modify this however you want after you take it from me. So if you come to my website and you click on this, and then you go to your website, you hit Control V. First of all, how cool is that? How simple that is to share a component and to use a component that somebody else made. You literally can just copy it and come in here and hit Control V, and then you can modify it however you want. If you want to add more props and do more fancy things, you can. If you want to change those breakpoints, you just have to come in here and change them to whatever you want. Like I said, maybe you're not doing 680, 768, 1160. Maybe you have slightly different breakpoints. Just come in here and update them. And then make sure whatever your mobile breakpoint is, you put that right here and you're good to go. So that's basically it for this video. I kind of just wanted to showcase the power of components. If you are a professional web developer, you've been doing this for a while, the idea of a component is not foreign to you. If you have been building in WordPress using page builders, the idea of a component probably is a bit foreign to you. A lot of page builders have component-like features, and they usually call it a template or something else. But this is much closer to what an actual component is. Like if you're building in React or something and you're building out components, or even just a JavaScript component, the idea is the same, where you have these props that you can manipulate in each instance of the component. So, and then you can, since it's a component, if I have this component on a bunch of different pages and I come here and I edit it and I update these breakpoints, it'll update those breakpoints on every single component. The only thing that doesn't affect every single component are these options. So these are instance specific. So these will only affect this particular instance of this component. It won't affect all the other ones. But anything I do once I hit edit, anything I do inside here, if I mess with the HTML, the CSS, if I mess with the JavaScript, that will update all the components on your website. So it's very powerful. You don't have to, go through and edit every single component. You just make the change once, and it's the same advantage to having like a header on every page. You update the header once and it updates the header on every page. You wouldn't want to have to go to every page, every one of your blog posts, and update the header if you want to do something like change the logo, right? You just do it once and it updates everywhere. Components, it's the same principle. So very powerful, super awesome that we can do this in Etch. And I think they are working on maybe even some more prop types, but right now you can add a text prop, a Boolean prop. So you could do a little switch. If the switch is flipped, it does this. If it's not flipped, it does that. Very useful. A select prop, immediate prop. I don't even know what that would look like, how you would use that. A loop prop. So you have a bunch of loops and you can choose, maybe it's the same, maybe you have this grid, right? And on one page, you want to loop through one JSON object that has this set of pictures, and then on another page you want to use the same component but you want a different set of pictures, so you could have a different loop. So you could create a loop prop here, and then you drop this component on one page, and all you have to do is select the loop, and that's it. And then you drop the component on another page, select a different loop, that's it. Very simple, very easy. And I think they're probably working on a few more types. In the beginning, when they first introduced components, text was the only prop type, maybe Boolean, but now you can see they have 6 different ones. So very cool, very powerful. I think I'm done rambling. I think I've pretty much talked about everything I wanted to talk about here. I am working on building a library of components. So this website is not finished yet. For instance, that doesn't work, but does home work? Home works. If you scroll down to the bottom of the page, I have these 5 components. This is a fun hover button where you notice when you hover over the button, it does a little animation, and the animation starts where your mouse touches the button. So you see it starts in the bottom right corner. If I come over here It starts in the top left corner. It also follows the mouse. So if I start in the top left corner, but I exit in the bottom right, it exits to the bottom right. So that's just a fun little button. This is CSS only. There's no JavaScript on this button. So if you want to use this, all you do, click on that, go to your Etch page, hit Control V, done. Now you get to use this component. I have a accordion component, pretty simple. This is a fun one because it has some props as well. You can choose if you want the first one to be open by default. So this is an example of a Boolean prop. If I edit this, you see this is a Boolean prop. Expand first. So if you have this switched on, then the first one will be expanded by default. If you switch it off, now it's not. You have to click on it to expand it. And then if you switch this one on, allow multiple, then when you open one, it does not automatically close the other. You can just open multiple ones. So again, since those are props, you could drop this same accordion component on one page and have one set of options there, drop it on another page and have a completely different set of options. So very powerful. What else do I have here? Cards, that's pretty basic. I did create an events calendar grid. I haven't updated this page yet, but this shows a grid. If you're using the events calendar for events, this drops a grid of events on the page. It's pretty simple. So because with the free version of the events calendar, you don't have really any options for displaying a grid of events. And so with this, you can drop a grid anywhere on your page that will display events if you're using the events calendar plugin. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I'll be adding more things here as I see cool stuff that I want to turn into components. I'll add them here, and they're very easy for you to just steal and go use on your own website. So that's it, guys. Thanks for watching this video. Hope you learned something, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.